Well, hello everyone. Really feel honored and excited to get to just kind of share a little bit of my story tonight. And if I haven't met you, my name is Ben Thomas. I'm one of the pastors here at New Hope. I'm going to give just kind of my testimony tonight. I wanted to share a little bit of my story, kind of my journey. If you've been around if New Hope, or if you happen to come, this is my family here. This is my wife, Dacia, my daughter, Brinley, my son, Adric, and our dog, River, who now is 100 pounds. 100-pound lab. He's massive. He's a monster. But they're great. So if you're here on a Sunday and you see them, you can say hi. I'm originally from Colorado. I grew up in a little tiny mountain town called Estes Park. I grew up in sort of kind of a Christian bubble. Both of my parents were in full-time ministry. My grandparents were in full-time ministry, which seems like it'd be great, but I hated it as a kid. Kind of felt like I was always known for my parents or my grandparents, and I never got to be me, which created a lot of tension in my life because I wanted to have my own identity. I wanted to be Ben Thomas, not so-and-so's kid or so-and-so's grandkid. And so that created some issues for me growing up, as far as I started, wearing, dyeing my hair, wearing chains, it was like I wanted to be punk rock, those were the days. I never thought I was being rebellious, but everybody kept telling me, why are you being so rebellious? And so I was like, well, if that's what people are going to tell me I am, then I guess that's who I am. Which started my journey of kind of destructive behavior. But I want to pull back a little bit. I'll say how I got to Oregon. So I kind of went through high school, had a lot of issues with some drugs and alcohol, just kind of dealing with pain. And I'll talk a little bit about where that pain came from in a little bit. Never in the world had plans of moving to Oregon. My dream was to go to Hollywood and try to be an actor. I never would have made it. But I kind of got in a lot of trouble at the end of sort of kind of towards when I was going to leave home. Got in some trouble with the law, and I need to get away from the people I was around, my friends, my community, because I was not going to get out of this pattern of destructive behavior. So I ended up going to England for a year. My parents helped me get into this 1-year Bible school, and I was like, well, what else am I going to do? And I know I can't stay here. So I went, and they had somebody had left some flyer in the hallway about this school in Portland, Oregon called Multnomah. And it had trees and mountains, and I was like, oh man, we're gonna be right in the woods. It's gonna be great. I'll snowboard every day. And I was a snowboarder, skateboarder, so they had, I opened the book up and they had like this picture of a skateboarder, and they had like some sort of skateboard ministry, and I was like, oh, that would be cool to go skate in Portland, Oregon. And I knew about Mount Hood because that's like the famous summer snowboard camp is at Mount Hood, and so I was like, oh, I could go snowboard. And then my parents were stoked because I'm going to some sort of Bible college. But I didn't know anything about Oregon. I played the Oregon Trail when I was a kid, so I thought, well, there's lots of buffalo and, diseases and all those things, and, we'll just hang out in the woods. And then I showed up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a big city. I'm not going to make it here very long. And I'm still here. That was in 97. I've been here ever since. But that's kind of really, skateboarding is kind of what brought me to Portland, and then I feel like the Lord really kind of found me here in new ways, which is great. I want to kind of go back in my story though. One of my first memories as a kid, and I talked about how I wanted to be an actor. I think I've always been sort of dramatic, and I've always liked taking on characters or acting things out. And I remember one of my earliest memories, my mom used to have I used to love, one of my favorite things, and still to this day, is Oreo cookies. I don't know if you like Oreo cookies, but I love Oreo cookies. And I used to love coming home and getting a little plate of Oreo cookies and a glass of milk, and then watch whatever my parents would let me watch on TV. But I remember we used to have this porcelain pig, like cookie jar, and you take the head off of it, and it was just always loaded with Oreo cookies. And I remember, we were very much one of those families where you couldn't eat if it wasn't like mealtime, unless it was a special occasion. And so my dad was out of the house, my brothers were gone, and I knew my mom was there, but she was in her room working on cleaning the bathroom or something. And I was like, oh, this is my chance. So I remember getting on the kitchen counter, and then I was probably only 5, 6 years old, very young. But I just remember just grabbing as many Oreo stuff in my pockets, just like I was going to create a little stash of Oreo cookies in my room. And then while I was at it, I was like, threw a couple in my mouth. And then right as I did that, and I was starting to put the head back on the pig cookie jar, and my mom walks in. And she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no. She's like, did you steal some Oreo cookies? And I'm like, and it was obvious. And she's like, all right, spit those out. And she's like, you got to give me all the Oreo cookies back. And so I had to go upstairs, and she's like, you need to wait. You're going to wait up here, and then you're getting the spanking. And I was like, oh, I hate getting spankings. And I get them a lot. And I remember seeing my mom. She's kind of, we were upstairs, and we had, kind of a railing that you could look down. I could lay and see down into the living room, so I could see my mom putting a record on the record player, which tells you how old I am. And I remember thinking, how could I get out of this spanking? And I remember in the moment thinking, well, and I don't know how I was this intuitive as a kid, but I'm like, oh, my mom's kind of emotional. And so I just remembered like kind of putting on this whiny voice, and then I just kind of through the railing said, Mommy, do you still love me? And of course, what does she do? Starts crying. She comes upstairs, gives me a big hug, and she says, wait here. Then she goes downstairs and she gets what do you think she came up with?
Oreo cookies.
Full plate of Oreo cookies and a glass
God.
of milk. And it was at that point in my life that I started realizing, like, oh, if I become what other people want me to be, I can get whatever I want. And so that sort of started my acting career at a very young age, of just kind of wearing costumes for people and just being whoever I was with. I'm like, I can adapt and I can be kind of who you want me to be, and then I'll sort of get whatever I want. And so that kind of started a really kind of dangerous sort of cycle in my life of figuring out, okay, I don't really know who I am, but it doesn't really matter who I am. If I can just be whoever other people want me to be, then life will go good for me, and I'll get Oreo cookies and glasses of milk. And there's a character in the Bible that I really relate to, his story. His name is Jacob. And so I'm going to read this passage, a couple passages for you. This is from the book of Genesis. Jacob, let me make sure I didn't skip over something. Jacob and Esau, if you are familiar with that story, Jacob and Esau were twin brothers. Jacob was sort of in Jewish custom, in Israeli custom, the firstborn would get all the blessings of the family. And so even though they were twins, Esau came out first, so Esau was going to get all the family blessings. He was going to be sort of the leader. And even in an early age, Jacob was right behind him. They even say he was holding on his heel as he came out. Which is why his name, Jacob, means, heel grabber or deceiver or liar. And so Jacob sort of, as he grew up, he always had this older brother who was kind of his father, really loved his brother. His brother was like very masculine and would go out and hunt. And he was this tough guy. And Jacob was like a little, mousier, his kind of a mama's boy. And he never really I don't think he ever really got the love and appreciation from his dad that he wanted. And so later in life, his dad was dying and was about to give up, about to die. And so this is where we pick up the story. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and he said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I am now an old man and I don't know the day of my death. Now then get your equipment, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat, so I may give you my blessing before I die." Now Rebekah, who was Isaac's wife, was listening, and as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "Look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, 'Bring me some game and prepare me tasty food to eat, so I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way that he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat so that he may give you his blessing before he dies.' Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, 'But my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing.' His mother said to him, 'My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say, go and get them for me.' So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food, just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and his smooth part of his neck with goat skins. Then she handed her son Jacob, which, by the way, if he was that hairy, he must have been pretty hairy.
Yeah.
She handed her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread that she had made. He went to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord your God gave me success," he replied. Then Esau said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. "Are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "I am," he replied. Then he said, "My son, bring me some of your game to eat so that I may give you my blessing." Jacob brought it to him, and he ate, and he brought some wine, and he drank. And then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So he went to him and kissed him, and when Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be the Lord over your brothers, and may the son of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." After Isaac finished blessing him, Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence when his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. And then he said to him, "My father, please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." And his father Isaac asked him, "Well, who are you?" "I am your son," he answered, "your firstborn Esau." Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate just before you came in, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me too, father." But he said, Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Esau said, "Isn't he rightfully named Jacob? This is the second time that he's taken advantage of me. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing." Then he asked, "Haven't you reserved any blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, "I have made him lord over you, and have made all his relatives his servants, and I've sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Do you have one blessing for me, father? Bless me too, father." And then Esau wept aloud. And the reason I relate to this story is I feel like, just like I said, like the idea of like just trying to be what other people want me to be, like I would wear costumes for people, just like Jacob wore costumes to try to get whatever I wanted. And Jacob's name means liar, deceiver. And so I felt like I grew up being deceptive, and I was a liar just to get whatever I wanted out of people. And it became a pattern for me, a horrible pattern that created a lot of problems. Sort of that deception just continued and continued. But no matter how many times I tried to run, no matter how many times I tried to hide, it would catch up to me. And the reality is, the truth about my story is that I had secrets. You know, like I had things in my life that were painful things that happened that nobody else knew about. You know, I had abuse outside of the home that I didn't know how to talk to my parents about or how to talk to anybody about. And so that created a lot of deep internal anger and deep internal pain. And one of the things that I've learned in life is like when we have those kind of secrets and we're not honest with who we are, it's kind of like we're walking around wearing a mask. Like we walk around because we know how we feel inside. We feel gross, or we feel mad or angry, or pain, we feel the pain. And so we don't want to walk around moping all the time. So we sort of have to put this mask on that makes us feel happy. It makes at least, maybe not makes us feel happy, but at least people see us and go, "Oh, okay, they're probably doing okay. They don't seem like they're too far off." But the reality is that everyone that wears a mask, and we all have worn masks at times where we're trying to hide secrets that we have inside. But the reality is that in order to deal with the fact that you're wearing a mask and you're not congruent with the world around you, then you have to find something to anesthetize that pain. And that's where, for me, addiction came in. And I found things that could numb the pain, that I didn't have to deal with this reality that who people saw was not who I actually was on the inside. And so that's where I turned to a lot of things to try to anesthetize that pain. And so, but the reality is, shame is the glue that keeps holding that mask on. And so I had so much shame in my life. And that shame actually was a cycle. So then I would find that created more pain in my life, which meant I would chase after more things to try to make me feel better and anesthetize the pain that I had going on. And so I feel like I just had layer after layer after layer of mask in my life. And I really didn't feel like I knew who I was. You know, some people would say I was the fun party guy. And then I'd go home and my parents were like, oh, you're like, you know, you're a decent kid. You know, lose your temper a lot, but that's all right. Fight with your brothers too much. But you know, I just wanted to be who people needed to be, and I was completely lost. And I remember my dad preached often at churches, and we used to have to go and sit, and I used to just doodle and draw. I didn't really ever want to pay attention. But I remember being a teenager, pretty young, probably about 14 or 15. I remember going to this church, and I remember my dad kind of giving an illustration, and he read this story during one of his sermons, and I usually didn't listen, but this time my ears perked up and I started listening. So I'm going to read you the story that he read. It's called Sardines. It's from a book that maybe you've heard of called All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. But it's just their little pithy stories. But this is the story that he read that day. My dad's English. I'm not going to try to read it in an English accent, but I will read it for you. In the early dry dark of an October Saturday evening, the neighborhood children are playing a game of hide and seek. How long since I played hide and seek? 30 years, maybe more. And I remember how I could become a part of the game in the moment if invited. Adults don't play hide and seek, not for fun anyways. Too bad. Did you ever have a kid in your neighborhood who always hid so good that nobody could find him? We did, and after a while we would give up on him and go off, leaving him to rot wherever he was. And sooner or later he would show up all mad because we didn't keep looking for him. And we would get mad back because he wasn't playing the game the way that it was supposed to be played. There's hiding and there's finding, we'd say. And he'd say, well, it's hide and seek, not hide and give up. And we'd all yell about who made the rules and who cared about who anyways, and how we wouldn't play with him anymore if we didn't get it straight. And who needed him anyway, and things like that. Hide and seek and yell, no matter what. Though the next time he hid too good again, and he's probably still hidden somewhere for all that I know. As I write this, the neighborhood game goes on, and there's a kid under a pile of leaves in the yard just under my window. He's been there for a really long time now, and everybody else is found, and they're about to give up on him over at the base. And I considered going up to the base and telling them where he is hiding. And I thought about setting the leaves on fire to drive him out. But finally I just yelled, "Get found, kid!" out the window, and scared him so bad that he probably wet his pants and started crying and ran home to tell his mom. It's really hard to know how to be helpful sometimes. A man that I know found out last year that he had terminal cancer. He was a doctor, and he knew about dying, and he didn't want to make his family and friends suffer through that with him, so he kept his secret, and he died. Everybody said how brave he was to bear his suffering in silence and not tell everybody, and so on and so forth. But privately, his family and friends said how angry they were, that he didn't need them, that he didn't trust their strength, and it hurt that he didn't say goodbye. He hid too well. Getting found would have kept him in the game, hide and seek, grown-up style, wanting to hide, needing to be sought, and confused about being found. I don't want anyone to know. What will people think? I don't want to bother anyone. Better than hide and seek, I like the game called Sardines. In Sardines, the person who's it goes and hides, and everybody goes looking for him. And when you find him, you get in with him and hide there with him, and pretty soon, everybody's hiding together, all stacked in a small space like puppies in a pile. And pretty soon, someone giggles and somebody laughs, and everyone gets found. Medieval theologians even describe God in hide-and-seek terms, calling him Deus obscundidus. But me, I think old God is a sardine player. Well, he found the same way that everyone gets found in sardines, by the sound of laughter in those heaped together in the end. Ollie, ollie, oxen free. The kids out in the street are hollering the cry that says, come on in wherever you are, it's a new game. And so I say to all those who have hid too good, get found, kid, ollie, ollie, oxen free. And I remember sitting in that pew listening to my dad read that story, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he's not reading that to anybody but me. He figured it out. He figured out that I'm lying and I've been deceiving him, and there's all these things that I've been hiding behind. And it really was that moment where I was kind of just wrestling with, like, God, I don't know if I know who I am anymore. I'm numbing all the pain in my life by drugs, alcohol, violence, all the things that I can get just to distract me from dealing with this fact that I just don't like who I am, and I've got these deep secrets and these deep pains that I don't know how to navigate. But the reality is that it doesn't matter how far we try to run from our problems and our pain, eventually it catches up with us. And I'm sure many of you have been through that same experience. And for me, that's how it was, where kind of your costumes just get ripped off and everybody sees you for who you are. And that happened with Jacob in sort of our story that we're following. He had, when he had left, he fled from, Esau, because he knew Esau was going to try to kill him when Esau found out he stole his blessing. So he ran, found a wife in this other area, and then deceived her father. And then he followed the pattern of deception again, deceived him and took a lot of his livestock and went and ran when his father-in-law found out. He was pissed, and so he took off and ran with his wife and his kids. And he got to this place where he had heard that Esau, his brother, who he hadn't seen in years, was coming with an army moving towards him. And he thought, oh, Esau's going to kill me. So he put his wife and his kids on one side of the river and all of his livestock, and then he stood on the other side of the river to meet his brother and to wait. And in that space, he ended up wrestling with God. The angel of the Lord kind of came and wrestled with him. And so I'll read the rest of this story. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all of his possessions. So Jacob was left alone. A man wrestled with him until daybreak. And when the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it's daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I'm not going to let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." And what I love about that story is this idea, and it really was the story of my life, where I got to this point where I just couldn't run from my lies anymore. They caught up with me. And I got busted for and the time was just so embarrassing. I was selling weed to my dad's Bible college students and in town, and it got out, and then I got busted for it, and thought, okay, I'm going to make it through this. Thought I was going to get sent away. Tried to run away from home. It didn't work out. That's where I found that tension. I actually love my family, but I also wanted to live a party life and just kind of do what I wanted to do, and I just felt so twisted up inside. And it was kind of like everything was exposed. I got in some trouble with the law a couple months after that, and it was one of those moments where my parents just had to sit down with me like, "What are you doing with your life? We don't know who you are anymore." And I was like, "I don't know who I am either." And I remember having this moment where I was up in my room, and I didn't, I would say that I was a Christian, but I don't think I really followed Jesus. I don't know if I understood fully for myself. It was my family's faith, not my faith. But I remember begging and asking God that night, I just don't know what you want to do with my life. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And it was this moment where I feel like God just kind of was like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, I'm Ben Thomas. Just like Jacob was like, when the angel God asked him, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm Jacob. I'm a liar and I'm a deceiver." He's like, "Finally, thank you for telling me who you are. And now I'm going to change your name, and I want to do something with your life." And he ends up being the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. And in my life, it was that moment. It was a shift moment for me where I was just kind of I'm tired of running. I'm tired of all the masks. I'm tired of all the secrets. I'm just going to talk about who I am and let God kind of do some healing in my life. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. And that was the moment that God started changing me and helped me realize God, you want to do something with my life so much more than just let me sit in pain and try to just deceive people all the time. And so I'm still in process. I'm a pastor, but that doesn't mean I still don't struggle. Still don't have cravings for some of the things that I used to like in life. But I don't want to go back to the lies and the deception and the secrets and the pain, because I hated that world. And I'm so grateful. And what I realize is I can't do it alone. I need community, and I need people. I need to get out of my hiding spaces and play sardines of life, where you're actually not trying to do it alone and just hiding from things all the time, but you're actually opening yourself up to be actually received and loved by those around you. And it actually holds me accountable to the person that I want to be. And so I'm grateful that I get an opportunity to pastor. I'm grateful that I got an opportunity. I worked at a church called Imago Dei Community for many, many years and started a ministry there called Refuge, which is our sort of life recovery. I did that for 12 years and spent many years just kind of trying to work through my own pain and my own addiction and my own abuse. and getting them to walk with other people in that space. And as a pastor, one of the greatest gifts that I feel like I get is just to sit with people in their pain and go, man, I've been there and I know what it feels like. And your story is very different from mine. The common denominator is both of us know what pain feels like. Both of us knows what loneliness and isolation and shame feels like. And Jesus wants to take that from us and make us wounded healers, where he actually can take those wounds and shift it. You know, like one of the things that the number one question I feel like people ask me as a pastor when they meet with me is, if God does miracles, why won't he take my pain away? Like, why can't he just, I'm so tired of the pain and the hurt inside. Why won't he just, you know, like I've been praying that he would just take it away, and it doesn't seem to be just disappearing. And what I realized through my own story is that I don't think God wants to waste our pain. I think he loves us too much to just ignore the tragic journey that so many of us have been on in our lives, that he actually acknowledges that and says, I don't want to waste what I could do through you in that space. And I feel like for me, I wouldn't change anything about my story, even though some of it was so horrific and painful. But it's allowed me to be in a space where I get to be sort of this wounded healer. Like, I feel like that's where God has used me the most, is to be sort of a wounded healer in that space, where I thought that he had created me to do one thing, and then he ended up doing something different with me. And so I'd like to end by showing you a video that a friend of mine, Scott, when I was running sort of our recovery community called Refuge, he's like, man, I made this video and I thought of you and your community. And I just feel like it really captures the heart of this idea of, you know, coming out of our hiding places, recognizing that God maybe can take something that's painful in our life and then turn it around and make it into something that actually is a blessing to others. So I want to show this to you. Oh, not that one.
Once a great ship was built. It was strong, mighty, something to behold. And it was given a great purpose: to deliver important seeds on the far side of the ocean. The ship celebrated its great purpose. It thought, how great of a task, I must be valuable. Look at this great purpose I was given. This is what I was meant to do. So it set sail. On its journey, an unforeseen storm came upon it. It thought it could handle it. It was sure it could handle it, but the storm was much bigger than it planned for. It couldn't control the situation. The ship was wiped out by the storm. It found itself wrecked on some rocks. It couldn't move. It couldn't go anywhere. The great ship was lost in the ocean. As it sat there for a long time, it sat with its failure to fulfill its purpose. But something unforeseen happened. Slowly the water seeped into the seeds, and they began to germinate and grow. They grew and grew, and over time, there was a large forest. One day, another ship came passing by, also broken and floundering from an unforeseen storm. It came to the broken ship island and asked, "May I rest here a while? I'm so tired from my journey." The great ship replied, "Sure, by all means." As the new ship rested, the great ship gave some of its wood to build a shelter for the crew of the other ship. They stayed a while. After they rested and were healed, the new ship left renewed for its journey. "Thank you for your hospitality. You really helped me." After a while, another ship came by. That ship also asked if it could rest for a while. It had been bruised and battered in a storm too, and needed a place to be. The great ship took some more of its wood and built another shelter for the much larger crew. When it was healed, it also went on its way. This kept happening. New ship after new ship kept coming, all injured by an unforeseen storm and needing a place to be for a while. The great ship realized that it had something to give, a place to rest, and solidarity from being wrecked as well by the unforeseen storms of the great sea. Pretty soon, the great ship decided to build a lighthouse so that all ships passing by that way could find a place to be cared for, to rest, and then continue on their journeys. Throughout the years, the great ship cared for many, many broken and bruised ships. This was a quizzical mystery to the great ship. Out of its own wreckage and failure, it became a gift to others. It always wondered if this was the purpose all along.
So I love that video because I feel like for me, and you know, I'm also, I didn't say this earlier, but I also am a commercial fisherman. So I run a boat up in Alaska. I've been doing that for 28 years. I'm leaving 3.5 weeks for the season. But I love the idea of the ocean, and the waves have been something that, for me, has been a symbol in my life. Like, life gets hard, and we all face stormy seasons. We all face stormy times. And you probably heard the term, like, we're all in the same boat. And that's, you know, like in Alaska, we always talk about that. Like, you know, sometimes you have really long days, and it's like, hey, we're all in the same boat. Like, you're not gonna sleep in when everybody else has to get up and get on the boat. But the reality is, like, we're not all in the same boat. Like, we all have different boats, different stories, different journeys, but we're all in the same ocean. And all of us face times when we have waves and when the storms come, and we need people in our lives. And the reality is, like, what I have seen God do in my life is that in a lot of those storms that I've gotten wrecked and broken, and just like that ship where it was supposed to take these seeds across the ocean, and then it gets wrecked, and then those seeds end up being something totally different. And I feel like I had a lot of dreams in my life of what I thought I was going to become, and that didn't happen. And God had a totally another purpose for me. And I feel like it was actually out of the pain of my life that he actually created that space for me to be sort of that wounded healer and get to walk with others. And so I hope for you, I don't know what your journey is. I don't know what your boat looks like. But I do know that we're on the same ocean and that life gets hard. And I'm glad that there's a community like this where you can support, encourage each other, pray for each other, and keep pressing each other into what God has for you, because he wants to use you. And so I think where I would ask you, I know you have small groups and there's discussion questions. And I think the questions that I would want you to talk about tonight is, you know, what are some of the things that you feel like people have named you? That God, it's not that God's named you this, it's what other people would name you, that other people would say that you are. Or what are some of those hiding places that you know, like, I still have these things where I'm wearing a mask and I don't want to wear a mask anymore. I want to be honest and not have secrets, because it's the secrets that create that need for something to anesthetize the pain. And then we go through the whole shame cycle again. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we've got to rip it off and just be like, I want to be honest with what I'm going through and what I'm struggling with. Mm-hmm. And that's when we can find God's mercy and grace, often through his people. Mm-hmm. And so as you go to your groups tonight, I hope you have an opportunity just to kind of talk through some of those things and where you're at. So thank you for letting me share tonight.
Thanks, Ben.
Can I pray over for you before I go?
Yeah.
Lord Jesus,